The teacher was calling out names when he suddenly grabbed a dagger and cut open his thigh. After confirming that there was a child named John on the list, he pulled out a handgun from his thigh and fired. The female classmate stepped forward to block the bullet. John jumped out of the window to escape. The teacher's exposed thigh revealed a mechanical skeleton. He turned out to be an intelligent robot from the future. John hid behind the school bus. Unexpectedly, the robot directly overturned the bus and stood at a high place, using infrared vision to search for the target. It quickly located John and rushed towards him. At this critical moment, the female classmate drove her car into the robot, knocking it away. She swiftly picked up John and left the scene. There was still bloodstain from a bullet hole in her chest, yet she was still alive and well. It turned out that this female classmate was also a robot. Why were there so many artificial intelligences from the future around John? The story is also linked to the movie Terminator. In the future, humans created an artificial intelligence called Skynet. It established a fully automated defense network. Unexpectedly, Skynet awakened self-awareness and classified humans as enemies. This led to a war between humans and machines. John is the leader of the resistance in the future. To eliminate this enemy, Skynet sent a group of Terminators back to the past to kill John. The resistance also sent its own Terminators to protect their future leader. The story unfolds in this context. At this time, John and his mother Sarah were living a life of secrecy in a town. Sarah was uncomfortable with their comfortable life. She frequently dreamed that her son died in the Terminator, leaving her fiancé Charlie behind and embarking on a new journey of escape with John. Charlie returned home to find that his future wife had vanished. He hurried to the police station to report it. The FBI sent an agent to inform Charlie that his fiancée had escaped from a psychiatric hospital 2 years ago. Not only did she blow up that hospital, but she also killed the nation's top computer scientist Miles. Sarah had pointed out that Miles would invent a computer system that would wage war on the world and send robots to kill her son. Of course, the FBI didn't believe these claims and had been pursuing Sarah relentlessly. At this moment, mother and son settled in Red Valley, New Mexico. John met a local girl named Carmen here. He hoped for a quick return to stability in his life. However, the arrival of the substitute teacher Crow disrupted his peaceful school life. Crow was the Terminator assassin sent by Skynet. Carmen, the female student, had come to this time to protect John. In the name of the future John, a fierce battle erupted between the two parties at the school. The shooting incident at Chris High School made local news. Sarah, who was working in a diner, rushed to the school to find her son. As soon as she arrived, she was caught by Crow. However, seeing his demeanor, it seemed he hadn't succeeded. Sarah felt somewhat relieved. Just then, John suddenly called.
Down. Where are you?
I'm going to the house.
I'll be right there.
Mom!
I love you, John. Stay right there.
Crow dragged Sarah home to wait. He fired when he saw a figure at the door. However, the newcomer was the Terminator Carmen. The two robots fought fiercely. Sarah grabbed a weapon to help out. The fighting power of the robots was truly exaggerated. If they continued, the house would be demolished. Taking advantage of the chaos, Sarah got her son into the car. Carmen grabbed some wires and short-circuited Crow. She then rejoined Sarah and John. At most, Crow would reboot in 120 seconds. They had to leave quickly. After dark, the three took a short rest in an abandoned building. Carmen, bare-shouldered, extracted bullet casings. Fortunately, John was already asleep. Sarah urged Carmen to at least put on some clothes. After all, you are wearing a human skin. Through their conversation, it was revealed that Carmen was from 2027. She had just arrived in 1999, only 73 days ago. It took her some effort to find Sarah and John. Carmen stated that Skynet's missile defense system was activated on April 19, 2011. 2 days later, it launched a nuclear war against humanity. Sarah expressed her confusion. The founder of Skynet, Miles, was already dead. Why hadn't the apocalypse disappeared? Carmen explained that someone had rebuilt Skynet. However, the identity of this person was unknown. Agent Ellison quickly tracked down Sarah's residence in Mexico. He also found Kevlar high-strength material on a chair. Witnesses at the school also pointed out that their substitute teacher seemed to be a robot. The developments were beyond the FBI's expectations, but no matter who it was, John remained confused. He didn't understand why he was so unlucky, being chased by robots even before he was born. John just wanted to be an ordinary person. Sarah didn't want her son to bear this burden, so she didn't plan to keep running. Instead, she aimed to find and destroy Skynet. The three quickly arrived at Miles' residence in Los Angeles and wanted to talk to his wife Teresa. Sarah explained that no matter what the FBI told her, Miles wasn't killed by her. He willingly sacrificed himself for all of humanity. But now, mechanical technology has returned. Miles' research data is the only clue. Sarah hoped Teresa could recall any suspicious individuals or organizations that showed interest in his research. Teresa said that all the informed people and data were blown up or burned by you and Miles. I don't know anything. At this moment, Carmen sensed a Terminator approaching. The three quickly got into the car and crashed into Crow. The latter chased them, shooting continuously. Fortunately, Carmen was prepared. She activated a preset bomb to temporarily disrupt Crow's movements. Unfortunately, Sarah was shot during the escape. In this situation, they couldn't go to the hospital and could only find a garage for a hasty treatment. Carmen believed they needed to find a safe place, so she took the mother and son to a nearby bank. John couldn't help but feel strange. Did robots even have bank accounts?
Everybody on the floor! Please!
This method of withdrawing money is quite direct. Carmen rushed into the vault and found the safe number A117. She punched it open. Inside were several sets of keys. She instructed the two to press the numbers to retrieve items from each safe. John saw the weapons and knew that they came from the future. To be precise, they were remade by people from the future after entering the past, because when traveling through the time tunnel, no items could be carried, not even clothes. At this moment, Crow had arrived at the vault door. Carmen quickly finished the final assembly and handed the high-tech weapon to Sarah. She instructed her to wait until the isotope solution turned red before firing. Carmen told Sarah to guard the door well. Then she opened the safe to access the time machine. This was also pre-built by engineers sent by the Resistance. Carmen set the time for 2007. In the next second, Crow burst through the door. As Sarah fired her gun, Carmen activated the time machine. The three found themselves on a busy street in 2007, and they were completely naked. Seeing this naked spectacle, passers-by quickly took out their phones to record it. Carmen approached a few thugs and knocked them out while naked. She stripped the thugs of their clothes and changed into them.
So this is where it all starts? This is where Skynet begins?
You're safe.
No one is ever safe.
Since traveling to 2007, John had been confined indoors and couldn't go out. This was because he lacked a new identity. Having a fake ID alone wasn't sufficient. John needed a fabricated history of life as well. To solve this issue, Carmen took Sarah to find some familiar Resistance members and hoped to ask them for help in forging identities. Upon arriving at the designated safe house, they found a scene of bodies lying around, from the tattoo numbers on their arms. This Resistance army was once caught by Skynet. Carmen was about to confirm the identities of the dead one by one, when one of the men suddenly attacked. Judging by his skills, he seemed to be a Terminator. The two robots engaged in a fierce close-quarters combat. They crashed through the walls and fought outside. The Terminator assessed the situation. It detected Carmen's combat capability as unknown, and decided to escape for the time being. Carmen chased after it. Seeing this scene from upstairs, Sarah rushed to the street. She pulled out her gun, stopped a motorcycle, and gave chase. Sarah spotted an oncoming Terminator, and she ducked and drifted to knock it over with her motorcycle. Just as Carmen was about to deliver a finishing blow, she was suddenly hit by a passerby.
Please remain calm. Oh my God.
This delay allowed the Terminator to slip away. Sarah grabbed Carmen and asked, "What happened to the promise to protect us? It's only been 3 days, and already the fighting has started."
Why not stay in the past? I've had 7 more years to get ready. To get him ready.
No, you wouldn't have,
Why not?
because you died.
According to the original timeline, Sarah would die on December 4, 2005. This statement left her with mixed feelings. Sarah forced herself to focus on destroying Skynet. According to Carmen, the Terminator they just encountered was only there to kill the Resistance members at the safe house. Skynet still didn't know that Sarah and John were there. No pursuit orders had been issued. The two took a short break and continued on to resolve the new identity issue. On the way, Sarah couldn't help but ask, "How did I die?" Carmen's answer was quite unexpected. Sarah didn't die in battle but from cancer. As they spoke, they arrived at the home of a man named John. Sarah was an old friend of his. All her previous fake identities had been created by John. However, it had been several years since her last visit, and John surprisingly said he had stopped doing that long ago. Now he just wanted to enjoy his retirement. However, his nephew Carlos had taken over the family business. John gave Sarah an address and told her to seek Carlos's help. They arrived at the address on the note, but this kid wasn't as easy to deal with as John. He wanted $20,000 for 3 fake IDs. Sarah didn't have that much money right now.
That's a family discount in these hard times, especially for someone who's been dead 8 years. 9/11 double prices overnight.
9/11, what's that?
From Carlos and the others' accounts, Sarah learned about the most severe terrorist attack that had occurred on American soil. John had been cooped up at home for 4 days. He couldn't take it anymore. Taking advantage of his mom's absence, he sneaked into a computer store. John searched for his name on a demo computer. He wanted to learn about reports from the past few years. It indicated that he and his mother died in that bank explosion. At the end, there was also news about Charlie. He seemed to be doing well. Suddenly, a girl came over to remind John not to use the prototype to go online. Your screen is being shared on the display behind you, and you need to delete your browsing history too. The girl kindly came over to help him out. John hurriedly left and snuck into Charlie's residence to check on him. He genuinely liked this man who almost became his stepfather. However, the photo on the table indicated that he had started a new family. In a moment of carelessness, John exposed his location. Charlie couldn't believe his eyes. John told him not to come closer. After several unsuccessful attempts to dissuade him, John had to knock Charlie down and escape. When Sarah and Carmen returned, John was sitting in the living room. He concealed the fact that he had sneaked out. However, John wasn't good at lying. Carmen quietly wiped his neck.
Surface skin temperature high, salinity high, pulse abnormal.
It's because the kids snuck out while we were gone. Wouldn't look me in the eye, his shoes are wet with grass. Don't need to be a tin man to figure that one out, just a mom.
Sarah didn't pursue the matter further. The urgent task was to get $20,000 first. This time, she specifically brought John along to prevent him from getting restless and running out to cause trouble. The three of them sneaked into a mansion that had a security line around it. They aimed to find something valuable. John noticed a cat poster on the wall that seemed out of place in the entire house. When he pulled down the poster, there was indeed a safe hidden behind it. Carmen was about to force it open, but got electrocuted by a trap. She would also need 120 seconds to reboot. John used the residual fingerprints on the safe to successfully unlock it. Meanwhile, the Terminator had sensed the situation there. Sarah threw Carmen into the car downstairs. She and John escaped through the window together. Just as they landed, Carmen successfully rebooted. The three returned to their hideout to check their loot, and discovered a good amount of weapons, jewels, and cash. With this money, they purchased a complete set of documents, and could easily apply for social benefits with ease. Sarah was preparing to leave with her new identity, when she heard Carlos say something in Spanish to his subordinate. That night, Sarah sneaked into John's house, to give him a chance to explain the truth. Because of Carlos's Spanish phrase, which referred to John as a rat. This is the common name for whistleblowers.
Are you selling people out? Are you selling me out, Enrique?
John admitted that a few years ago, he was detained for illegal gun possession, and did provide some intelligence to the police, but he had never said anything about Sarah. Sarah chose to believe John. In the next moment, Carmen shot him dead. Her reason was that they couldn't allow snitches to exist, and John was very likely to lie. Sarah was furious at this. You killed him just because he might? John has a family. After obtaining the new identity, John went to school. Sarah was still worried about the cancer issue, and went to the hospital for a checkup. At the same time, a sanitation worker discovered the destroyed head of Crow. He quietly put it in a bag and took it home. That night, a helmeted man broke in. The sanitation worker grabbed a stick to chase him away. He provocatively lifted the intruder's helmet, only to find a dead man's head attached to a mechanical body. Crow killed the sanitation worker to reclaim his head. Crow assembled his body, and then needed to find a way to get a full set of skin. He rushed to a hospital, and stole a large number of blood bags. The security there was nothing to Crow. Then he broke into a scientist's home, and wrote a set of formulas on the blackboard, to get the scientist to quickly help him create skin. The scientist was dazzled by the advanced formulas. He didn't care about the intruder's identity, and immediately agreed to help. The scientist stayed up for several nights to prepare. Crow walked in and took off his clothes, revealing his shimmering metallic body. This left the scientist stunned. John, thinking of his safety, Carmen and John would attend school together as siblings, possibly due to the shadows cast by the 9/11 events. The school had strict security checks in place. Metal objects couldn't pass through the detectors. But the problem was that Carmen was a metal person. She was stopped twice in a row.
Excuse me, this is my sister.
Extra credit for you.
Look, she's got a metal plate in her head. Really, it's a big one.
I fell. Hard.
While the two were attending school, Sarah was also busy investigating. She brought photos of the safe house to Teresa for identification and explained that one of the individuals might be connected to Skynet. If you recognize anyone, you must tell me. Years later, Teresa's mindset had changed. This time, she surprisingly cooperated. She pointed out a young man named Andy. In the fourth photo, he had interned at Cyberdyne for a summer. Miles had liked him a lot. Teresa urged Sarah to promise not to take Andy's life casually until it was confirmed that he was related to Skynet. Sarah quickly arrived at the digital city where Andy worked. She didn't act rashly. Sarah bought 3 phones and was about to leave. Unexpectedly, just as she got into her car, Andy chased after her. This guy actually wanted to invite Sarah to dinner. What a great opportunity for contact. Sarah certainly had no reason to refuse. After school, the 3 gathered at home. John asked his mom how the progress was going. Sarah said that Teresa had indeed recognized someone.
What do you do now, work in a lab or build rocket guidance systems or something?
Cell phone salesman.
Shut up.
Cell phone salesman, and not a very good one.
In the evening, Sarah made careful preparations. Before going to Andy's house for the meeting, she subtly probed him for information. As a result, she learned that Andy had dropped out of Caltech in his senior year due to his father's death. Sarah also noticed that on his wall, there was a poster of the famous human-machine chess championship. This indicated that he was very interested in artificial intelligence. When Andy started talking about it, he became noticeably more talkative. Andy opened a cabinet to show Sarah his new invention. It was an upgraded chess-playing robot. Andy explained how impressive this machine was. Sarah found it somewhat amusing. Just then, she saw a shadow through the window. The person had a Skynet work camp tattoo on his arm. Due to a recent spate of break-ins, Andy immediately called the police. Sarah hurriedly said her goodbyes and returned home. John became very anxious after hearing about the chess computer. He kept firing questions at her.
Dinky little homemade soapbox, or if it was a full-fledged AI platform.
It plays chess.
So did Einstein.
John's concerns weren't unfounded. Mature AI platforms have learning capabilities. They continuously grow and can integrate other programs. Computers have a supernormal phase. When machine intelligence reaches a certain level, they can create smarter evolutionary versions without human assistance. Once that moment arrives, humans might have to say goodbye to the world. The next day, Sarah's medical checkup results came out. She was completely healthy, with no illnesses at all. The doctor noticed that Sarah was still worried and couldn't help but advise her. Don't stress yourself too much over future events. We can't predict the future. We can only try to prevent it. Sarah also made a silent resolution. Better to mistakenly kill someone than to let one slip by. After returning home, she immediately arranged to meet Andy. It required mental preparation to take action against an innocent person. Sarah hoped to talk more with Andy. What if his machine posed no threat at all? Andy viewed Turk as an emotional, learning child.
Talk about it like it's human.
Well, you never know.
Andy's suspicion grew even larger. The situation on Sarah's side was tricky. A major incident also occurred at the school. Initially, Carmen was learning how to fit into the school.
I'm a pig. I look pregnant. Does it make me look fat?
Yes.
What the hell? What's your problem?
Carmen couldn't understand what the girls were saying. Soon after, the class bell rang. Everyone left the restroom, but a sound of crying came from one of the stalls. A blonde girl walked out crying. Someone had hung her underwear in the hallway. Carmen could see that the girl was very upset.
It was a present. It's tight.
The blonde girl rushed out of the restroom, leaving Carmen confused about what went wrong. The girl no longer wanted to endure bullying at school. Before long, she stood on top of the gym building. John wanted to go save her, but was stopped by Carmen. If he took action, he would definitely expose his existence in the newspaper. John couldn't break free. He could only watch as a life was lost. John went home and had an argument with his mom.
Isn't that what I'm supposed to be? A hero? Isn't that who I am? If it's just gonna sit inside me, if it's just gonna sit in my gut, then what are we doing?
Meanwhile, Agent Ellison was investigating the case of John's murder. He quickly traced it back to Carlos, because on the day John was murdered, he had called his nephew 3 times. It wasn't easy to get Carlos to talk. Ellison didn't waste much breath. He believed that a smart person would make the right choice. After saying that, he left his business card and walked out. Not long after, Ellison received another report. He arrived at the residence of the murdered scientist. The future formulas on the whiteboard had been erased. The scientist's body lay on the bathroom floor. His 2 eyeballs had been gouged out, because Crow could regenerate flesh and blood, but couldn't generate eyeballs. At the same time, Sarah didn't take action against Andy. She simply set fire to his house and computer. John was in a bad mood. Because of the blonde girl's death, Sarah wanted to comfort her son, but she was interrupted by Carmen. Carmen had discovered that Crow was likely to be revived. Carmen explained that a fire had occurred at the Oakland docks yesterday. A refined tantalum ore ship had been forced to head to Los Angeles. This ore is a crucial component of the Terminator's internal skeletal alloy. Moreover, on the day they traveled back, surveillance footage showed Crow's severed head. As long as the chip inside wasn't damaged, they could self-repair and regenerate skin to create a new face. Upon hearing this, Sarah quickly packed her belongings and prepared to continue fleeing south. But John was fed up with hiding everywhere. No matter where they ran, they would be found anyway. It was better to face it head-on. He could hack into the port's shipping schedules to locate the containers carrying tantalum ore, then wait for the right moment to ambush Crow. After some hesitation, Sarah decided to adopt her son's suggestion. The ship carrying the tantalum ore would arrive at 5 a.m. The 3 arrived early at the port's loading area to lie in ambush. If Crow was coming for the tantalum ore, he would definitely pass through this area. Soon, a suspect appeared. Carmen rushed over and subdued him, but he was just an ordinary human. Right after, a fully loaded truck drove away. John noticed several unconscious people lying on the ground. This meant that those people had stolen the truck. Could it be that Crow had accomplices? The 3 followed the truck to an abandoned factory. Sarah noticed that the truck had military license plates. A young man easily lifted a whole crate of ore. He clearly wasn't an ordinary human. But after Carmen scanned him, she determined he wasn't Crow. This was because their internal structures were different. Who did this robot belong to? Why did they want to steal this batch of tantalum ore? Sarah didn't want to delve into these questions for now. Since the newcomer wasn't Crow, they didn't need to take risks. However, John wasn't willing to give up easily. That tantalum ore could assemble at least 500 robots. It's basically a walking weapons depot. If John could sneak into the truck, he could track their location through the computer. Sarah didn't want to put her son at risk, and urged John to get in the car and leave quickly, but he was unwilling to blindly follow orders, and entered the factory through the rear window. Sarah was about to follow him to save him, but was stopped by Carmen. If that robot had orders to kill John, it would definitely detect him getting closer. The 2 saw John sneak into the truck through the window. He placed his phone on the ore shelf. Unexpectedly, just as John was about to leave, a worker suddenly jumped onto the truck and closed the cargo door. John could only hide behind the shelf, afraid to make a sound. Then a patrolling man noticed Sarah and Carmen standing there. Sarah raised her hands and approached slowly.
Have you seen a dachshund puppy?
This delay for the 2 of them allowed the truck carrying John to leave the factory. Fortunately, they could still track each other's phones. However, due to the bumpy ride, John's phone fell to the ground. The armed worker frowned and came over to check, but John, who was crouching behind the shelf, knocked him out. But that broken phone was already destroyed. John couldn't contact his mother without a signal. Sarah was even more anxious. At the same time, Crow found a plastic surgeon and forced the doctor to help him create a new face. Once the surgery was completed, he immediately killed the doctor. The next day, Agent Ellison received a report of a crime. The reason he was able to arrive at the crime scene so precisely every time was that these crime scenes could detect a strange blood sample. Although this blood was extremely similar to human blood, it contained no red blood cells. This time, a similar strange blood sample was found in the hospital's sewer system. In addition, the corridor surveillance footage captured a suspicious man. According to a nurse at the plastic surgery clinic, this was a customer named George. He had come in last May to get his chin and nose done. Of course, the man in the footage wasn't the real George, but Crow after his surgery. He had stolen George's face from the politician's files. Of course, Agent Ellison couldn't guess this from George's file. He was just an ordinary washed-up actor. Ellison called George to the police station for a blood test. As long as he checked for red blood cells, he would know if George was the person he was looking for. However, before the blood sample results came back, Crow knocked on George's door. Since the actor's suspicion would soon be cleared by the blood test, Crow decided to kill him and take his place. Unexpectedly, when Ellison learned that the blood sample didn't match, he still didn't give up. From the surveillance footage, the killer had been in the operating room for 2 days. Was it possible that he had forced the doctor to make him look like George? Other officers raised doubts, saying that the anesthetics in the surgery records had not decreased. For such a major plastic surgery that required deep incisions, it would take at least 5 hours, and no one could complete it without anesthesia. Therefore, Agent Ellison's hypothesis was rejected. He couldn't get support from the FBI, and had to personally visit George. He warned George that someone might be impersonating him. If anything unusual happened, he should let them know. Feel free to call me anytime.
Thank you for your help.
Sure.
Ellison found it a bit strange. How had the star become so polite? Next, let's take a look at Sarah's side. She captured the unconscious patrolman and handed him over to Carmen for questioning. As a result, she learned that the truck from the factory was heading to the McGuire Artillery Range. The cargo was to be placed in Armory 37. The patrolman was just a lackey, and he didn't know more details. After Sarah got the information she wanted, she instructed Carmen to leave the patrolman in the minefield to fend for himself. Meanwhile, the truck John was on had already arrived at its destination. 2 workers came over to open the cargo door, but found that their accomplice was missing.
Guy must have popped it. Been bitching about his money all week. You think he just split? You surprised? Guy threatened to bail twice a day.
Taking advantage of their distraction, John slipped down from the truck and hid. He saw 2 drivers reporting to the Terminator, Carter. Just as they finished speaking, they were shot dead by him. Carter closed the warehouse door and stood still, as if entering some kind of sleep mode. John was about to figure out how to escape, when the worker he had knocked out woke up. He grabbed John, and was about to report to Carter. John quickly told him, "Your accomplices have already been killed by Carter. If he finds us, we're both dead." Unexpectedly, the worker was quite tough, and let go of John to confront Carter directly. He woke up the Terminator, but his neck was twisted by the other person. After doing this, Carter resumed his sleep mode. John looked around, and found a landline phone. He immediately contacted his mother. She was just outside the door, but couldn't break in. John informed her that the Terminator had entered sleep mode. Carmen explained that this meant he had completed his task, and would shut down to enter standby mode, until moved or activated. It would take about 15 seconds to reboot. John had to open the door, and run out within that time limit. He carefully took the key, and unlocked the door. Carmen immediately took down Carter. John called for his mother to get in the car, but he couldn't figure out how to drive this manual transmission at all. Moreover, Carter quickly shook off Carmen, and came over to hold down John's front of the car. Sarah fired a shot at him. The car ran over Carter, and drove out of the garage. Carmen closed the garage door for safety, and took the switch key with her. The armory had a very high level of security, so even a Terminator would find it hard to escape immediately. Carmen drove the truck full of tantalum ore into the cliff, to eliminate the possibility of the enemy creating robots. But there was new development on Andy's side. He actually fixed the chess computer, and was now going to participate in a computer competition. Sarah told her son to go to class with Carmen first, while she went to check out the competition site. When Andy saw her, he excitedly introduced, "The second-generation Turk is more adaptable and harder to predict than the destroyed first generation. Moreover, as long as he wins this competition, he can secure a military contract." Sarah's expression turned serious upon hearing this. Crow was impersonating a federal agent to talk to Charlie. He suspected that Charlie might be hiding Sarah.
All due respect, Agent Kester. The woman that I knew, Sarah Reese, she blew herself up at a bank 8 years ago.
Crow didn't continue to press for answers. Instead, he adopted Agent Ellison's style. Crow handed Charlie a business card, and told him to contact him if he found any leads. Charlie could deceive Crow, but he couldn't hide it from his wife, who was with him every day. Faced with his wife's aggressive attitude, he could only confess. "John came to our house not long ago, and he warned my wife not to leak anything." At school, to mourn the blonde girl, everyone left many flowers and notes in the hallway. Carmen didn't understand this human behavior. No matter how many notes were written after a person dies, they couldn't be conveyed to the deceased. John didn't like her indifferent attitude at all, so he brushed off Carmen, and went to chat with Shirley. They were deskmates in chemistry class, so they were somewhat acquainted. A male classmate, Maurice, warned John You're a new student, so you might not know, but Shirley isn't quite normal. Something happened to her at her previous school. I heard she was locked up by her dad for a while. Everyone tends to keep their distance from her. John didn't take this warning seriously. After class, he and Carmen went to the competition site to find Sarah. Andy's computer had already entered the finals, and was competing against a team from Japan.
We do. Cheer very hard for the Japanese, or Cameron will kill him.
The two watched the chess match nervously. Fortunately, the Japanese team won the match, and the contract. Andy's robot fell into the Japanese team's logic trap. Although he didn't secure the military contract, Andy's program still had the potential to become Skynet. Sarah wanted to tell him the truth, and restrained the development of the program. As they walked halfway, they encountered a hurried-looking person. By the time Sarah entered the office, Andy had already been shot dead. The Turk computer was also missing. Sarah quickly pursued the suspicious figure, and used all her strength to keep him engaged. Finally, she managed to hold him until the police arrived. Sarah hid in the shadows, and watched as the killer was arrested by the police, but she felt an indescribable frustration inside. Andy shouldn't have met such a fate. That day, John hacked into the Los Angeles Police Department's intranet, and found information about the killer. Although there was no name, he had a tattoo of a Skynet work camp on his arm, and was also a member of the resistance.
He's one of your best soldiers. You sent him here to wait for us.
But why did this tattooed man want to kill Andy? Sarah decided to have a talk with him. Meanwhile, a bald Terminator had also set its sights on the newly imprisoned tattooed man. However, Agent Ellison arrived at the police station. Before anyone else to interrogate him, he realized that this criminal had appeared at the scenes of 3 other murders. He must know a lot of insider information. Ellison ordered the tattooed man to be brought to the federal station for a thorough interrogation. But just as he left, the bald Terminator disguised itself as a prisoner and blended in. Sarah also disguised herself as a lawyer to gain visiting access.
It was you, wasn't it? On Andy's porch that night you've been watching. You wanted to kill him. The poor kid, and you did.
The tattooed man insisted. I didn't kill anyone. All I wanted was that computer. But by the time I got there, Andy was already dead, and the machine had vanished. It seemed that whoever took the computer could very likely lead to the birth of Skynet. The tattooed man urged Sarah to find Andy's investment partner, as he must be involved in this somehow. He also warned Sarah, a Terminator is hunting me, and it might have already found me. You'd better leave quickly.
My brother carried your snap for luck.
Who's your brother?
Brother's Kyle.
Let me explain a bit here. Kyle Reese is John's father. At first, he was sent by John to 1984 Los Angeles to rescue Sarah, who was being chased by robots. They unexpectedly fell in love and conceived the future John. And this tattooed man is Kyle's brother Derek. Sarah didn't stay long and left the police station, but she was determined to find a way to rescue Kyle's brother, because Ellison planned to transfer Derek. He was soon placed in a transport vehicle. Derek dug out a piece of metal from his arm and prepared to open the handcuffs to find a chance to escape. Meanwhile, Sarah quickly brought help to hijack the vehicle. Carmen effortlessly jumped onto the transport vehicle. She smashed the bulletproof glass and yanked the officer in the passenger seat out. Next, Sarah threatened the driver with a gun to get out of the car. She took over the steering wheel herself. The hijacking went very smoothly. However, the bald Terminator quickly pursued them. Carmen swiftly grabbed her weapon and opened fire, but the bald guy was unfazed by the bullets. He jumped into the cargo area in one leap. The two robots grappled in the tight space, causing the vehicle to sway wildly. Carmen grabbed the bald Terminator and smashed him against the vehicle wall. She created a large hole in the metal with the impact. Carmen pinned him down with her body. Sarah deliberately drove close to passing vehicles to try to crush the bald guy's head. This guy was extremely tough to deal with. He managed to counterattack Carmen and break free, just as he was about to shoot Derek. Thankfully, Carmen acted quickly to stop him, causing the bullet to miss its vital target. Carmen seized the opportunity to subdue the bald guy, and instructed John to get the toolbox to remove the chip from the bald Terminator's head. Then they sent Derek back for emergency aid. However, he had internal injuries that required professional medical attention. Sarah made a quick decision to go to the nearest emergency center and kidnap a doctor to bring back.
What happens when you get caught? Then what?
I said we have to save him.
You don't even know who this guy is.
He's your uncle.
He's your father's brother. His name's Derek Reese.
John no longer hesitated. He quickly called Charlie for help. Meanwhile, Ellison arrived at the hijacking scene and discovered a severed hand. Charlie on this side didn't have time to ask too much and hurriedly began first aid. As Derek's consciousness faded, he recalled many things from the past. He and his brother Kyle worked under John. They were part of the 132nd Squad. Before Kyle undertook a dangerous mission, he would pull out a photo of Sarah to look at. Derek never understood his actions. That time, the two brothers tracked a patrol unit in an attempt to find Skynet's secret weapon. He was ambushed by robots. Kyle, who was at the front, quickly disappeared. Derek wanted to save his brother, but was grabbed by the Terminator by the throat. He was locked in a dark room and had a tattoo symbolizing Skynet captivity added to his arm. For a long time following that, Derek and a few comrades were continuously imprisoned there. Every now and then, robots would come in to take away a prisoner. High-tech aircraft often flew over their heads. Derek secretly began to dig at the floor, looking for a chance to escape. Suddenly, his comrade Billy began to confess.
My name's not Billy. My name's Andy. All of this, it's my fault. I built Skynet.
The chess computer created by Andy is the prototype of Skynet. After an unknown amount of time, the robots stationed there finally retreated. Before leaving, they left behind an axe. Derek broke the chains and left the abandoned building. He found that the base where they were hiding had already been destroyed. Everyone infiltrated to search for their comrades, but saw only ruins everywhere. Derek also found a nearly burned photo in his brother's locker. Kyle had always carried this photo with him, and this situation must have encountered something unexpected. Soon, a group of allies found them. From the leader's description, it was revealed that during the time Derek was imprisoned, Kyle and John had discovered Skynet's nest. They took a team deep into it. Days later, John emerged and ordered the nest to be blown up, but no one had seen Kyle since then. Derek couldn't understand what had happened to his brother. He insisted on talking to John. Derek saw the robot Carmen at the base. He was about to shoot, so his comrade quickly stopped Derek and explained that this was our robot. John reprogrammed Carmen's system, and she only obeyed John's orders. Initially, Derek was still unconvinced, because robots had slaughtered too many of their kin. He was very resistant to artificial intelligence. But later, during a surprise attack, Carmen saved his life. After Derek found John urged him to go back 20 years, to establish a safe house and assemble the chips, to prevent the birth of Skynet. This was also why Derek wanted to kill Andy. Not long ago, his safe house had been compromised, and several team members were killed. As these memories concluded, Charlie successfully stabilized Derek's condition, and finally had the chance to ask Sarah why she had disappeared without a word back then. Sarah knew that words alone weren't enough, so she directly revealed the bald robot. Then she explained to Charlie about Skynet. The facts were right in front of him. Even if Charlie didn't believe it, he had to, especially since he had witnessed. Carmen held the bald corpse on her shoulder with one hand. This is clearly something that no human could accomplish. Not long after, Derek suddenly began to cough up blood. Although Charlie tried to help him stop the bleeding, he still needed 600 milliliters of AB negative blood. This blood type is extremely rare. If they couldn't find it, Derek would have a hard time surviving. Fortunately, John was a relative and had a matching blood type. He could donate blood to Derek. Halfway through the transfusion, Derek suddenly began to struggle violently and shouted loudly, asking where Kyle had gone. It seemed he was lost in painful memories and couldn't react for a moment. John wanted to identify himself to Derek, but his mother had warned him not to reveal their blood relationship. Carmen cut open the bald Terminator and separated the flesh from the metal. Then she burned all the metal skeletons to prevent any technology not belonging to the present from being discovered. This could lead to unpredictable consequences. However, the bald Terminator's left hand was lost during the fight. Carmen promised Sarah that she would retrieve it, but she secretly hid that brain chip. Carmen immediately began searching for the severed palm. She deliberately sabotaged a power station to divert the attention of the Los Angeles Police Department. Then she went to the police station to search for the hand. That item had already been sent to the FBI. After Sarah learned the details, she instructed Carmen to find Andy's partner first, because the Turk computer might be in that person's possession. The partner's name was Dmitri, a Russian guy. He had a sister at home who taught ballet. Carmen could use this detail to approach him. As for the severed hand, Sarah would handle it personally. She disguised herself as a registrar and called the FBI to inquire about the severed hand. she learned that the person in charge of the case was Ellison. Sarah was worried that she might expose herself and had to hang up the phone, and that severed hand was indeed in Ellison's possession. He had also seen the metal structure beneath the flesh. Ellison had long believed that Sarah was a crazy woman. However, the recent strange occurrences made him doubt whether robots really existed, so Ellison inquired about Professor Furman's address and planned to go there personally to have a chat. This professor had been responsible for treating Sarah and surely knew a lot of insider information. Just as Ellison was busy with his investigation, Sarah sneaked into his home. From the documents on the table and the tapes from the mental hospital, she deduced that Ellison would go to see Professor Furman, so she went home and asked John to look up the professor's address online. John obediently did as he was told, but saw a tape from the mental hospital in his mother's bag. John was deeply hurt. After seeing the contents of the tape, Sarah noticed that something was wrong with her son, and quickly realized he had watched that tape. It contained footage of Sarah being confined in a mental hospital and signing over her guardianship rights. No wonder John was so heartbroken after seeing it. At this point, Ellison had arrived at the professor's home. He drank the tea that the professor offered him. Then he suddenly felt dizzy and lightheaded. When Ellison regained consciousness, he found himself tied to a chair. It turned out that the professor didn't believe he was a federal agent. He claimed that Ellison was a robot from the future. Ellison was almost speechless. "If I were a robot, how could I possibly be poisoned and faint?" The professor replied that it wasn't necessarily so. "What if you are a high-end model, pretending to faint to deceive me?" After saying this, the professor grabbed a knife and cut into Ellison's thigh to check. He found no metal inside. The professor was nervous for a reason. He had witnessed a Terminator throw a burly guard out of a window with one hand. At this moment, the professor realized that Sarah wasn't lying. Robots from the future did indeed exist, but he had no concrete evidence, and could only hide this secret in seclusion. Ellison quickly said, "I found evidence, which is why I came to ask you to verify it," proving that Sarah's doomsday prophecy might be true. After the professor obtained the severed hand, he injected Ellison with a sedative. The professor couldn't allow anyone to get that hand. He filled the room with gasoline, lit it, and hurriedly left with a broken hand. As soon as he left, he bumped into Sarah and punched her in the face. Sarah took the hand and walked away. A heavy rain saved Ellison's life, but the evidence he had just obtained was gone again. In desperation, he locked the professor up in a mental institution. Carmen disguised herself as a ballet student to get closer to Dimitri's sister. Although robots can perfectly replicate various movements, DRA could tell right away that Carmen was stiff. Her dance movements lacked soul. Carmen wanted to understand what soul meant, so whenever she had time, she went to the dance studio to observe DRA's movements. Unexpectedly, she stumbled upon a debt collector. Carmen protected DRA and kicked the mobster away. She then straightforwardly revealed her intentions to DRA.
I can help your brother. Tell me where he is.
DRA was persuaded by Carmen to take her to meet her brother. Dimitri said he was just doing it for the money. Someone paid him to steal the Turk, so he modified the final stage of the program to deliberately make Turk lose the final round. After saying this, Dimitri handed Carmen the buyer's business card. He said he only knew this much. At this moment, the debt collectors had arrived downstairs. After Carmen obtained what she wanted, she didn't fulfill her promise to help the siblings. Instead, she allowed the debtors to kill them. Robots have no emotions, so how could they intervene to save unrelated people? Meanwhile, Sarah went to find her son to apologize. She explained that after signing the relinquishment agreement, within 3 seconds, she regretted it. Sarah never thought about giving up John, so the first thing she did after escaping the hospital was to find him.
I'll always find you.
I'll always find you.
The mother and son reconciled as if nothing had happened. They destroyed the severed hand together, but Derek still didn't trust Carmen. She had clearly claimed to have destroyed the bald Terminator, yet she had hidden the Terminator's brain chip. Carmen had to explain that this chip contained all the visual recordings of the Terminator. There might be important information in it, that's why I kept the chip. But no matter how she argued, the fact remained that Carmen had lied. Furthermore, the chip was the only irreplaceable component, yet she had secretly hidden it from everyone. Derek became increasingly angry and questioned Carmen. If it was because you leaked the location of the safe house, That caused the complete annihilation of my team. Carmen assured him that she had never leaked any information and had never done anything to endanger Sarah and her son. Sometimes, when it came to mission requirements, she had to lie. Carmen voluntarily handed the chip to John to decipher. From the visual recordings inside, it was revealed that the bald Terminator had actually gotten married. Moreover, his wife had no idea that her husband was a robot. Carmen explained that the T-888 was a type of advanced infiltration robot, that even a spouse would find it hard to detect, that her husband had been replaced. The group used the recordings to locate the address of the bald Terminator's false identity. Sarah and Derek planned to go check it out. However, the homeowner Barbara wasn't at home. Derek speculated that Barbara had been killed by the bald Terminator.
He wasn't holding her captive. Wasn't intimidating her. They lived here together.
The two looked around at the furnishings in the house and found that the computer had been removed from the documents on the table. Barbara was an administrative officer for the city of Los Angeles. She was primarily responsible for infrastructure. No wonder the bald Terminator chose to infiltrate her life. This woman might have connections to Skynet. Besides that, the house didn't seem to hide any other information. Meanwhile, John had spent the whole day researching and discovered that the way the T-888 stored memories was very different from humans. They stored memories by categories, such as tasks, times, or locations. From this clue, they extracted information about Barbara. It showed that after gaining her trust, the bald Terminator immediately killed Barbara. Derek dismissively warned Sarah, "I told you before, they are born executioners." Sarah decided to find Barbara's body first. With Carmen's help, finding the dumping site would be a matter of minutes.
I don't understand your need to find her. She's dead.
That's because you don't value human life.
But she's not life. She's just a body. Bones and meat.
The group quickly found the body. However, after turning her over, they realized that this person wasn't Barbara at all. Derek pulled out the deceased's identification.
Who the hell's Jessica Peck?
A threat to Skynet.
Jessica was a lobbyist. People paid her to oppose the automated traffic information conversion system. This system was a project under Barbara's direction, and one of Skynet's key initiatives. It could connect every major intersection and the data center at City Hall through a fiber optic network. Once operational, it would have ears everywhere, no matter where you went. This system would track and catch you. If the purpose of creating Turk was to make it the brain of the Skynet system, then this software would be the nervous system of Skynet. Jessica had been silenced by the bald Terminator. Because she wanted to halt this project, John suggested planting a virus in the system to destroy it, but it was impossible to access the City Hall computers from the outside. Sarah told her son to just focus on creating the virus. As for how to implant it, she would figure it out. The next day, Sarah and Derek went to survey the area near City Hall. These buildings were connected by a series of underground tunnels built during the Cold War. After the robots initiated the war, Derek and Kyle had been hiding in the tunnels, so he was very familiar with the underground layout. Meanwhile, the long-absent Crow continued to use his identity as an agent to track down John's whereabouts. One day, he arrived at the local high school to request a list of this year's incoming students. The teachers in the office weren't so easily fooled. He demanded that Crow present his authorization documents. Otherwise, he wouldn't disclose any student personal information to anyone. Crow, not wanting to waste time, simply snapped his neck. Then he opened the computer and pulled up the list himself. He investigated one school after another and was sure to find where John was hiding. That day was pizza day at the high school. A volunteer came by to distribute pamphlets and told Carmen that a federal agent was looking for her brother in the office. "He's not in any trouble, is he?" Hearing this, Carmen quietly approached the office. Sure enough, she detected that the agent was Crow. Carmen grabbed a passing male classmate Morris and asked him to use John's ID to distract Crow. It's strange to say, wouldn't the protagonist change his name while on the run? The robot saw that Morris didn't match and left the school. When John learned of this, he was somewhat angry because Carmen had put Morris in danger. With just a slight misstep, this ordinary student could lose his life. Although John understood that Carmen meant well, he increasingly felt that robots could never understand humans. He could only ask Carmen not to tell their mother about Crow's visit. Otherwise, Sarah would surely want to move again. The group then continued to review the bald Terminator's visual recordings. In the footage, Derek's teammates were tracking Barbara. Unfortunately, their operation was too careless. and had already been exposed. As a result, the bald Terminator traced the location of the safe house and killed the entire team. This meant that the safe house was compromised, not because of an insider or Carmen's betrayal, but purely due to the incompetence of the teammates.
I didn't know he was. There were a lot of leads, we spent a lot of time on our own.
This damn Skynet has already killed too many people. Sarah learned that her son had prepared the virus. She entered the underground tunnel with Derek and devised a way to enter City Hall. However, when Derek arrived at the location in his memory, he discovered that there was an additional wall. Could it be that the current timeline has had some changes compared to the future building? He had to set up explosives to blow the wall open. As a result, what lay behind was a dead end. However, looking at the paint markings on the wall, the data center should be in Building B, Level 4. They used safety ropes to reach the building's database, and quickly implanted the virus plugin. But the firewall system was blocking the virus, and it triggered an intrusion alarm. The two hurriedly retraced their steps, but a group of guards quickly pursued them. Derek deliberately drew their attention away, so that Sarah could ambush them from behind. After the two of them took down the guards, they quickly fled. At the same time, John was also hitting a bottleneck. Whenever he tried to deeply hack the chip, he would be forcibly kicked out by the system. At this moment, his phone suddenly dialed online. A robotic attempt appeared on the computer screen. Carmen and John immediately realized that the bald Terminator's chip was reviving. They frantically cut off the power and network cables. Because they reacted quickly, the bald Terminator probably hadn't had time to call for backup. Sarah and the others returned because the virus implantation had failed. John thought of another plan. Carmen's neural network is the most complex computer in the world. If her chip were placed into the traffic system, it could control or disrupt everything. John immediately opened Carmen's head and removed her head chip. Then he went to a random traffic light on the street to help Carmen infiltrate the entire system. Her power was indeed formidable. She easily paralyzed the entire traffic network. After John returned, he helped Carmen restore herself. The buyer on the business card also responded. He arranged to meet Sarah the next day, and he unexpectedly revealed something, that Derek was lying. The person who stole Turk didn't kill Andy. It was Derek who killed him. The next day, Sarah took Carmen to the internet cafe for the meeting. Derek and John were outside keeping watch. The person they were meeting was named Sakasin. He was an Armenian. When Sarah arrived at the designated table 19, Sakasin communicated with them through the computer, and stated that if they wanted Turk, they should bring 500,000 at 2 p.m. tomorrow, and place it next to the ATM, in a certain shopping mall's business area. After typing this line, the user on the opposite side logged off. Since Ellison learned that the bank explosion years ago didn't kill Sarah, he became even more convinced of Skynet and robots' existence. So he specifically came to ask Charlie questions, and hoped to find out Sarah's address. Charlie stated that no matter how many agents they sent, his answer would always be "I don't know." Ellison was puzzled upon hearing this. "We never sent any other agents," he said. Charlie immediately told Ellison the name of that agent. After Ellison left, Charlie surprisingly came to find Sarah. He wanted her to accept help from the FBI. After all, Ellison believed in the existence of Skynet. Sarah was very angry. "Neither the FBI nor you can protect us. Moreover, your reckless arrival could lead to this place being exposed." She urged Charlie to leave and not return. Then she asked Carmen to estimate the valuable things they had. They managed to gather around $240,000. This was far from the amount the seller demanded. They decided to find Sakasin for negotiations first. The next afternoon at 2 p.m., Sarah and Derek arrived near the ATM in the food court. However, they hadn't found Sakasin yet. When they saw a few police officers circling around, Sarah had to retreat with Derek. An unexpected guest showed up at their home. The seller Sakasin actually came to their door himself. He had gotten Sarah's address through Carlos, who forged identification. He inquired about Sarah's address. Sakasin raised the transaction amount to $2 million. Derek seized Sakasin. "If we kill you, we won't have to pay a dime." However, Sakasin was prepared. If he couldn't leave safely in 10 minutes, his men would reveal the address here, and John's school to the FBI. Sakasin stated that they had 24 hours to raise the funds. After saying this, he left on his own. Sarah instructed Derek to follow him. Meanwhile, Carmen, who was attending an outdoor class at the museum, spotted Sakasin's men. She immediately took action to deal with them. Then she stuffed them into the car's trunk to bring to Sarah. As for Derek, he had already been shaken off by Sakasin. This person had a very high awareness of anti-investigation. At this moment, the deceased's phone suddenly rang.
Hello?
You're still watching those kids?
I got my eye on them right now.
Well, I think they had someone follow me. No more games. Bring them back here.
Sakison didn't provide a specific location. Just when everyone was at a loss, the female drug dealer next to Carlos suddenly showed up. Her companions had all been killed by Sakison, so the female drug dealer secretly tracked him and successfully located Sakison's hideout. After Sarah got the address, she quickly set off. The receptionist saw the group coming aggressively and hurriedly pressed the alarm to alert the boss. Seeing the alarm, Sakison immediately hid in the safe room. Sarah instructed John to find the computer first. Then she asked Carmen to forcibly break down the wall. Sakison had already escaped through a secret passage. Sarah quickly scanned the surveillance cameras and discovered that Sakison had taken John hostage. She rushed out to save her son. Meanwhile, Derek appeared holding a girl. Sakison admitted, "She isn't my daughter." The girl was indeed not Sakison's child. Her father was currently in the restaurant. Sarah urged the girl to leave quickly and not to look back. Just keep walking. Then John took Sakison's hard drive. The contents were double encrypted. It would take some time to fully decrypt everything. Although John worked diligently without complaint, he felt somewhat sad inside, because today was his birthday. Normal kids would definitely celebrate, but Sarah seemed to have completely forgotten. Unexpectedly, Derek remembered. After all, he came from the future and had celebrated many birthdays with the adult John. Derek told him to set aside his work for now, and that it was time to celebrate. The two walked while eating ice cream. On the grass, a pair of brothers were indeed playing baseball. They accidentally hit the ball towards John. He helped the child pick up the ball, and noticed Derek's meaningful gaze. John instantly understood. The brothers playing ball were Derek and Kyle. The kid in front of him was actually his future father. This feeling was truly wonderful.
Father always had a nice arm.
How'd you know?
Every time I look at you, I see him.
For John, seeing his father in person was indeed the best birthday gift. Meanwhile, Ellison returned to the office to search for the agent Charlie mentioned. He discovered that the agent was actually George, a faded star. Clever Ellison guessed that he had stolen someone else's face and that he was likely a robot. Otherwise, no human could commit crimes perfectly multiple times and insert themselves into the FBI's records. Ellison immediately mobilized a large team to capture him. Upon receiving the news, Charlie rushed to the scene as well. However, facing off against Crow with just flesh and blood was akin to walking to one's death. These young officers were thrown into the pool, and numerous bodies filled the pool. In the end, only Ellison was left alive. He closed his eyes, awaiting death to arrive. Surprisingly, Crow spared Ellison. When Charlie arrived at the scene, the pool had already been stained red with blood. Ellison's eyes were filled with sorrow. Surviving was the greatest punishment for him. In the afternoon, John returned to his bedroom to continue working. He found a potential user intending to purchase Turk. Although there wasn't much information, it couldn't be ignored.
Why don't you take a break?
No, it's alright, I can keep going.
How are we supposed to celebrate your birthday if you're sitting in front of a computer? You actually thought I forgot your birthday.
John was about to shut down the computer when he saw Sakison's identification. The man on it was different from the one Derek shot. Could it be that they killed a fake Sakison? Just as he finished speaking, Carmen's car exploded. The culprit was indeed the man in the ID photo. The story of this season ends here. It's an old film from 2008. The story is set after the film Terminator 2. It tells the story of the protagonist Sarah and her son John. The first season's story focuses on the mother and son's journey of escape and their difficult battle against Skynet. Despite being 9 episodes long, it didn't advance the plot much, making it feel somewhat slow-paced. The season finale also felt too rushed. However, the biggest feeling from watching old films is the change in aesthetic standards of American dramas over the years. The previous actors were not only easy on the eyes, but also talented. At a glance, it was filled with handsome men and beautiful women. The old special effects had their own retro charm. Today's aesthetic standards really can't compare to the past.